Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with the latest developing news. We are hearing talks of another ceasefire deal. Hamas is apparently ready to make a deal after basically rejecting every deal. Egyptians and Qataris are mediating. Hamas is still holding 50 hostages they stole on October 7th. What can you tell us about this deal, and are you considering it, especially as President Trump has said Hamas must be fully destroyed?
Well, I think he said two things. He said, first, all the hostages have to be released, and Hamas should, they should be eliminated. They shouldn't be in Gaza anymore. They shouldn't have the power to conduct more murders, decapitations, rapes, burning of babies, and taking of hostages. So our position is free all the hostages, and as soon as possible. And this war will come to an end immediately. If Hamas lays down its arms, releases the hostages, Gaza can have a different future, but they have to do that.
Are you considering this deal?
Well, we're considering anything that will get 50 hostages, at least 20 live ones, and up to 30 dead ones brought back. That's what we're talking about, and I hope and pray that we'll succeed. You know, Stella, so far we've been able to release and bring back to Israel 205 out of 255 hostages that these savage Hamas monsters took. 148 of them are alive. We want all the others back, and as soon as possible. That's our position.
Yeah, and we've seen the images of the hostages that they do have right now. They look like literally death.
Yes, and they've been brutally tortured. They're starved. The only policy of deliberate starvation in Gaza, contrary to the lies that are spread against Israel, the only deliberate starvation policy in Gaza is the one that the Hamas murderers starve our hostages. And you saw them. You saw them with these emaciated arms. And in the same picture, in the same photo, you see the arm of the Hamas captors, corpulent arm. So Hamas is feeding themselves on the humanitarian aid that we enable people of Gaza to have, the civilians, but they starve our hostages, and it's outrageous. And the world, of course, condemns Israel and not Hamas. That's another absurdity that I think another great casualty of this war is the truth.
Yeah, we'll talk about the propaganda. And speaking of the hostages there, I've spoken to Hamas, the hostage families, who call it a weapon of war because Hamas is actually releasing videos of themselves in the tunnels, which we have aired on our network, showing them feasting in those tunnels. But Mr. Prime Minister, I do want to ask you about this. Earlier this week, President Trump called you and himself wartime heroes. When Israel, alongside the U.S., took action to prevent a nuclear Iran that's been responsible, really, for funding terrorism all over the world, critics warned it would lead to World War III. It did not. Your defense minister has now approved the takeover of Gaza City. Now, as you move to demilitarize Gaza from Hamas, you're accused of wanting to take Gaza, despite you making it clear you have no interest in keeping it. What are your plans? Your plans to end this war?
Well, my plan is to win the war and to win it as speedily as possible. And to do that, you have to take out the last two Hamas bastions left in Gaza. It's Gaza City and what are called the central camps. It's a narrow strip on the Mediterranean beach. And it's like going into Berlin after you sort of got through most of Germany. You know, the Allies they have to go into Berlin to finish the job. And again, we'd be spared in doing it, and in any case, we'd let the civilian population out. That's a prerequisite that I put forward. Let the civilians leave, and then give Hamas a very simple choice. You either lay down your arms, you give up, give us all the remaining hostages, or we'll go after you, which is common sense. But I want to say, you mentioned President Trump. I think he's been an extraordinary leader and extraordinarily valiant and wise. You know, everybody said to him, people said, quite amazingly, on the American right, some of the people on the fringes of the right said, oh, you're going to be dragged by Netanyahu into World War III, or you're going to get American soldiers with boots on the ground, and all this other nonsense. And in fact, it's proven to be exactly that, nonsense. President Trump joined us in the judicious force, you know, those B-2s that went right into that those atomic bunkers. And he was extraordinary. And I think all free people should thank President Trump for his leadership. And of course, you didn't have World War III. And of course, you don't have American boots on the ground. But Iran, that talks about death to America, that tried to assassinate President Trump twice, that murdered and wounded more Americans than any other force in recent decades in Iraq and Afghanistan with their IEDs, that's explosive devices, and bombed American embassies and so on. They burn American flags, they hate America. And so President Trump took the right action, joined us in opposing this common enemy that wanted to develop atomic weapons and ballistic missiles to be able to deliver them deep into Europe and ultimately to the United States. I think he did the right thing, and I think Americans should be proud of it. I think free peoples all over the world should be proud of his leadership.
Well, we Americans are proud of President Trump's leadership, but what is your reaction to him calling you and himself wartime heroes?
It's very kind of him. I have to say, you know, we were together in this war, and the decisions that you make are not obvious. Going into it, it's not obvious. Conducting it, it's not obvious. And you know how you begin, you never know how you end. And there's always both a national risk, an international risk, and a personal risk. And I think I appreciated very much President Trump's leadership here, and I'm very flattered that he appreciates mine.
You have no better ally than President Trump. Prime Minister, I want to talk about the propaganda war, which is huge. I've been addressing it since October 7th. I left mainstream media myself. To me, this is so important because Israel isn't just fighting a war on the ground, it's also fighting a war of propaganda. And I want to set the tone for our viewers because I think a lot of people don't understand just how bad the propaganda is. So Hamas stole and killed the Bibas family, okay? They strangled a 9-month-old baby boy and his 4-year-old brother in front of their mother, and then they killed her as well. But then they call Israel baby killers. So anyone who studies this war and watching it closely knows that Hamas runs a full-on propaganda machine. People even call it Pallywood, Gaza wood, okay? Staged videos, photos, fake headlines. There's tons of it online. All you have to do is look. That's what blows my mind. It's all over the internet. The accusations of a genocide, starvation, and the mainstream media buys it, they push it. But the consequences, Prime Minister, are real for Jews all over the world. How do you see this war of lies fueling Jew hatred?
Look, I think the Jewish people have been fighting a propaganda war and probably on the losing end for 2,500 years since antiquity. But the difference now is that whereas in the past, you always had the vilification, the tremendous lies in the Middle Ages and in modern times too, that preceded the massacres and the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust. I mean, Jews were poisoning the wells, Jews were carrying disease, Jews slaughtered Christian children for their blood. All these lies always led to these tremendous bloodletting against the Jews. The difference now is you still have the same lies. Israel deliberately killing Palestinian babies, whereas we make every effort to get Palestinian civilians and children out of harm's way. And Hamas makes every effort to keep them in harm's way. They shoot them if they want to leave the war zones, which we tell them to evacuate. The difference now is that, yes, we're subjected to the same propaganda, but when they come to slaughter us, we roll them back. That's the difference, because we have a state, we have the brave soldiers of Israel, we have the will to fight back. You asked me when will the surge in this propaganda war will end? Well, when the war will end. You have to end it as speedily as possible, and that's my goal. Get all the hostages released, smash Hamas, and win. And by winning the war, you win the peace, and you also win the propaganda.
But you know what blows my mind is the media, the mainstream media, they quote the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas. And they say that Hamas run Gaza Ministry of Health, but then they continue to take information from them. And it's as if critical thinking is just out the door.
Yes, you're right. I mean, that's the other casualty of this war. It's the truth. Israel has acted and the Israeli army has acted as no other army has acted in modern times. I mean, we put in 2 million tons of food. 2 million tons of food. That's a ton for every Gazan civilian, okay? A ton. And we're accused of deliberate starvation policy. That's false. We send millions of text messages, phone calls. We actually call the Gazan civilians on their cell phones and we tell them, look, we're giving up the element of surprise. We're going to go into your neighborhood because that's where Hamas has implanted itself among your homes, schools, hospitals, mosques. We want you to leave so we can come in. And many of them leave, but many of them are prevented from leaving by Hamas that shoots them if they try to go to the safe places that we designate. And then Israel is accused of these civilians. No, it's not Israel who's guilty of these civilian deaths, and every one of them is a tragedy. It's Hamas. Now, that's not been done anywhere in history. It wasn't done by American forces in Fallujah. It wasn't done in so many other areas in Iraq and in Afghanistan. It's just not been done. I have nothing. I have no complaints against the Americans. I have no complaints against the Brits. I don't have complaints against Churchill or Eisenhower in World War II. But when they had to go and take these German cities, okay, or the French cities where German forces were implanted, they just went in and bulldozed their way right through. We don't do that. We don't do that because times have changed and because we are doing everything in our power to prevent civilian casualties. But the horror of just buying all these Hamas lies, just swallowing them, hook, line, and sinker, that is a tremendous criticism, not of Israel, but of Western media and the ease in which they broadcast these lies. And let me give you the example. You saw in the New York Times, front page, the story of this emaciated child. You have the mother holding him, and it's a horrible picture. I mean,
it was a sick child.
It was a child with a genetic disease, cystic fibrosis. It wasn't at all starvation. So they corrected it with a postage stamp size correction, I don't know, buried somewhere on page 29. But this made world headlines. There were other such photographs. And the children also had genetic diseases. And in fact, in 2 of these cases, Israel actually took these Palestinian kids outside of Gaza, took them to hospitals, tried to take care of them. One actually was cured, thank God. But that's what you do. You take these false pictures and you blow it up on steroids to the world, accusing Israel of these crimes that the Jewish people were accused of in medieval times. Same lies, except now, on occasion, we have other outlets, fair-minded journalists who broadcast the truth, and we have also the ability to speak out, as I'm doing now. So I appreciate the opportunity you give me to fight on the 8th front. 7-front war against Iran and proxies. The 8th front is the battle for truth. And I ask all of you, get the facts. Stand up for truth. Stand up with Israel as we fight these Hamas monsters.
Prime Minister, you had talked about, because you mentioned the New York Times, you called it blood libel. You have said that you were thinking about suing the New York Times. Have you filed a lawsuit?
We're talking to quite a few lawyers. It's a possibility. It's a little difficult in the United States because I think there's a Supreme Court ruling that says a government cannot sue media, but for defamation. But we're looking. We'll see if we succeed. We should. In any case, I think they should be exposed, and they have been exposed. And it's important that everyone learns about this systemic bias and distortion of the facts that these so-called reputable news outlets produce. They're not reputable, and they're not news outlets. They're propaganda outlets.
And I'll tell you another thing, as I mentioned when I asked the question initially, all of this is also affecting Jews. Anti-Semitism is through the roof. Little kids are, at schools. They're going to schools and they're showing up with, swastikas painted on their campuses. So it's not like it's going into somewhere, in Never Land. Jews are paying the price for this propaganda. So we are in very, very dangerous times. Also, Prime Minister, I want to talk about, here in America for the past few years, we've been seeing our federal spaces hijacked by the Free Palestine movement. They've targeted our streets, our bridges, our airports, vandalized our statues, our monuments, our schools, the encampments. They have caused so much damage, it has cost taxpayers a fortune. Many Americans are afraid that radical Islamists are here and they're here to destroy our country. They chant, globalize the Intifada. You're familiar with the two Intifadas. They burn American flags. What information can you share with us to combat this existential threat, something Israel is familiar with?
Well, I think that this is, you're quite right, this is not something that occurred now in this war. It actually was preceded by at least 2 decades of NGOs, foreign governments like Qatar and Iran and others, pouring in money, billions of dollars into American campuses, poisoning American minds, young American minds, not only against Israel and the Jewish people and this anti-Semitism that you talk about, which is horrific and is a consequence of this, but also poisoning the mind against America. Now look at Al Jazeera, not in English, very reputable, sounds reasonable in English. You should hear Al Jazeera in Arabic when it speaks to, 1 billion Muslims around the world. The things that they have said about America, horrific things. The things they say about Israel, about Jews, classic anti-Semitism. And that's been allowed to go on for too long. In fact, I think that President Trump is doing a great thing when he goes into the campuses, these elite universities. I went to one of them in Boston, and it's like unrecognizable. What has happened there in the last 20 years is that people have been completely, brainwashed. And you have to say to these, as President Trump says, well, if you want American federal support, you can't have it for something that is clearly anti-American and against American values. And I think that's a very useful starting point. There is going to be a campaign that has to be launched against this cascade, this tsunami of lies. And it's not only that, it's also the social media that have paid bots. I mean, anytime somebody speaks well of Israel, he's immediately, shot by bots. And people think, mainline, straightforward communicators, they think, my God, there must be an avalanche of hatred out there. It's not. A lot of it are paid bots. And somebody is talking in a southern drawl, and he writes, some kind of a response. Turns out it's from a basement in Pakistan, okay, and it's not from Texas or from Arkansas, And so there's this concerted campaign financed by the enemies of America that is meant to not merely go against Israel, it's going against America. Now look at all these guys all these protesters on the campuses, protesting for what? For these Hamas murderers, the people who hate America. And ask them, what do they think of America? Don't ask them what they think of Israel. And they'll tell you that America is an evil monster that has to be brought down. That's what these people are. They're anti-Americans. They don't hate America because of Israel. They hate Israel because of America, because we represent America's best ally right in the heart of the Middle East. We're the fighting ally of the United States. I don't think you have too many who don't ask you to bring your soldiers on the ground, who basically defend ourselves, but in so doing, also defend our common interests and our common values. So I think these people should be exposed for what they are. The campaign on the campuses where it all begins is where it should end. That is, expose the lies, stand up for the truth, don't be cowed, and don't buckle.
Yeah, well, we see them burning the American flags and holding Hamas flags. I mean, American parents are terrified. I have to tell you, I have 2 beautiful daughters. It scares me to see what's happening from kindergarten to college. The indoctrination, they're being brainwashed, like you said, to hate America. And it's also, to tear down the Judeo-Christian values here. And social media, huge, because they just scroll online and all this hate is there. I mean, just a few days ago, under President Trump, the State Department revoked 6,000 student visas. Up to 300 were taken away for supporting terrorism, such as raising money for Hamas. Prime Minister, October 7th showed what happens when a generation is raised on hate. I don't know if our viewers know this, but in Gaza, they have what's called summer camps. They're not summer camps like here. I want you to talk about that with our viewers. But, thank goodness we have President Trump and this administration. But how bad could it get in 5 to 10 years if something doesn't change?
But it'll change because Hamas will be defeated. We're very close to finishing the job, and we're going to do it. But you're quite right. They have summer camps there. You know what? Summer camps for little children, suicide summer camps. You teach little children how they should wear suicide vests that will explode them, in order to kill more Jews. I mean, this is horrendous. This is barbaric, and it's not a symmetrical battle. It's Israel fighting for civilization against these barbarians. And what you see, unfortunately, in many European countries, is weak leaders who say, "Oh God, we'll buckle under and try to curry favor with the barbarians." It's what Churchill said about the crocodile. If we feed the crocodile, maybe it will eat us last. Yeah, but it will eat you. And if you don't fight this extremist Islamist fanatics, you'll see them at your door. You're already seeing them. You're already seeing them. And so we have, I think we have this battle. We're going to win this seven front war against Iran and its proxies, Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, all these savages that, that want to chant death to Israel, death to America. We'll win this war here. But I think it's very important that you win the war, the battle for truth and the battle for our common values there in America, in the West. That's an equal part of this war. That's where the real war is going to be.
Prime Minister, how do you shut out all the noise? You talk about the seven front war, all these people that want to take out Israel, eliminate the Jews. They say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Where do the Jews go? Obviously, we know what that means. How do you shut out all this noise and just keep going?
How do I personally do that?
You, Israel, I mean, you guys are up against so much.
Yeah, well, we were winning, if you haven't noticed. How do we shut it down? By focusing on the truth and on a simple understanding. If we don't fight, we die, because these people are out to get us. They're out to destroy every last one of us. It's a war of annihilation. Iran says we're going to exterminate Israel. It's proxies, like Hamas says, we're going to murder every last man, woman, and child if we could. They have no compunction. They don't try to warn civilians. They target our cities. They use their own people as human shields and then blame Israel for the casualties that they themselves caused. Look, you have to keep your mind focused on the truth, on the mission, and on victory. There is no substitute for victory, and we will win this war. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak the truth in front of your audience. Thank you.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for being here. We hope we can talk under better circumstances when the hostages are back home. They've been in those tunnels for now almost 700 days.
Thank you. I hope so too. And we're working towards that goal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.